And we are finally ready to export our character. So the export process is very simple. We already went through it in a couple of the last videos. As you can see here, for instance, the hat's not perfectly like aligning. There was a little bit of a movement right there. But those are the things that we can adjust in the software, in this case, Blender. We're going to be using Blender. So make sure your simulation is good. Make sure your pose is good. And once we're ready, we're just going to go and select all of the elements right here, File. And here's what you can do. To make things simple, I'm going to export right here, export as OBJ, and I'm going to export everything, okay? So you can see here that I have a test file. I'm going to call this full Doctor Suit and hit save. Now, there will be options, and these options are extremely, extremely important, so please pay attention. We want to select all the patterns. We do not want the avatars. You can export them if you are going to use them, but in our case, our avatar is pretty much completely covered. So the only thing that's visible right now are the feet, and we're going to be adding some boots later on. So we just want to do this. Now here, do we want to export everything as a single object, or do we want to export as multiple objects? I recommend doing it as multiple objects just because you're going to be able to select each specific object and modify them inside of Blender. But if, for instance, you're thinking about, I don't know, 3D printing or doing some other process, you might want to export everything as a single object. Then we are not going to be exporting any thickness. We are going to be adding thickness to like the bells and the bands inside of Blender, but that's a very simple extrusion. And over here, if you have materials that you're using and you want to export the texture that it has, pretty much like bake the textures, you can select over here and bake the diffuse, the metal, the normal, the roughness, opacity, all of them right here. I don't want to do that. I do want to export the unified UV coordinates, so I want to make sure that everything is in the single, like in the same UV map. But I don't want to export any of the maps because it's just going to occupy more space, and I'm going to show you another way to do it inside of the software. Over here, and this is probably the most important thing, by default, this thing is going to be set to centimeters. And if you do this and you export to Blender, it's going to be very, very big. So in this case, we want to change this to meters so that it knows that this object or this character measures about 185, I think, 87 or something like that. So that's it. That's pretty much it. That's how you export. Now, if we want to have a more controlled way of exporting things, you can select each specific piece and export it as an OBJ and just import them separately. That's up to you. That's up to personal preference. I'm just going to hit OK. Even though it might seem like it's a very heavy scene because of the simulation, object-wise, it's actually not that heavy. Like if we go over here and we check the element, you're going to see that this element is only 142 megabytes. So believe me, I've worked with gigabytes of informations before inside of ZBrush, for instance. And even though it is heavy, it's not super, super, super heavy. So let's very quickly open Blender. I'm using Blender 4.0, the early version. I probably need to update because I get an error every now and then. And if we go to File, Import, OBJ, we can go to our desktop. And here, and import our full Doctor Suit. We're going to hit import weight OBJ format. And here's where you're going to know if you did things properly or not. If the character is close to the size of the cube, you did things right, because this cube is supposed to be 2 meters high. So as you can see, this character measures exactly what we're expecting him to measure. And there we go. We got this. Now, this suit right here, as you can see, is still, even though we selected multiple objects, is still a single object. So what happened there? Well, it's not that it didn't export into multiple objects. What it did is each specific island of like patterns is still its own object. So for instance, if I go to face mode right here by pressing tab, and I go to this guy and I press the letter L, which is linked, I can select all of the linked patterns that are to this position on this hat right here. Just 1 second. And you can see that they're not going to the next element. I'm just selecting the pattern that's like touching it right now. So, or we can go to number 3 to go into face mode and do the exact same thing. So let's go face mode. Let's select all of the faces there, there, there. I'm just pressing the letter L again on my keyboard, which is the link tab. And there we go. Select this underline right here, letter G, and perfect. So now, if I press a G, for instance, I can move these faces around. Or, which is what I'm about to do right now, just missing one line right there on the center. There we go. I can hit the letter P and separate the selection. So now, all that selection that I have, it's now its own object. Ta-da! Just a hat. Still a heavy hat. Okay, let's go. Actually, we go to object mode. There we go. Still a heavy hat, but now we can have it right here. And I find it a little bit easier to get it exactly where I want it here inside of Blender. I might even like scale it up a little bit. If you want to change the pivot, of course, you go Object, Set Origin, Origin to Center of Mass. In that way, when we scale with S, it's just going to scale a little bit easier right there. So that's pretty much it. So at this point, the next thing that we need to do is we just need to separate all of the different pieces that we want to have as separate elements. Now, I don't want to separate everything, but I am going to be separating, we don't need this cube anymore. I am going to be separating, for instance, the gloves. I'm going to be separating the cape and all of the elements. Now, if we want this thing to look a little bit nicer, one thing that we can do is grab it, right click and hit shade smooth. It's going to make all of the lines and all of the elements a little bit smoother, as you can see right there. It will get rid of some of the hard surface edges. That's why the trims, for instance, like this ones are very important. You can see that this is actual geometry. Look at that. Like every single stitch was exported as geometry. So that's why things can get a little bit heavy as well. But you can right click and just shade smooth, and that's going to give you a slightly just better result on the shading of your element. Don't smooth it would be my advice. Like you might have the, let's say, what would be the word for that? You might have the temptation to just smooth everything and generate just a smoother effect. But the thing is, this is already a very heavy file, as you can see right here. So we already have quite a bit of polygons. So if you try to smooth things out, if you try to add a subdivision surface smooth, or if you're in Maya and you try to, press number 3, your computer might crash. It's a lot of elements. And again, once you render, especially at the resolution that we're going to be rendering, I'm going to press the letter N here. I like to change view to camera to view. And my thumbnail, as I mentioned before, is probably going to be like right around there. So the sort of like stuff that we're going to be rendering, right, at this distance, it's perfectly fine. We don't need to worry too much about the results or the elements of the character, because we're quite far away. If we were doing a close-up, as I mentioned before, we're probably going to have to use a very low particle density on the simulation so that we can see it here on the final render. So that's it, my friends. That's pretty much how you export here into Blender. Into Maya, it's the exact same thing. The only difference is instead of setting the preset to meters, you set it to centimeters, because Maya works with centimeters, and you should have your asset right there. One more thing I'm going to do here. Let's jump very quickly here again to the properties. I'm going to select this guy right here, this guy right here, and this guy right here. So the bracers, right? Like the leather bracers that we selected. And I'm going to hit P and get the selection out. Now, these guys, the thing that I like about these guys is that they're actually not that heavy. So we can add some modifiers. I'm going to go here to the modifiers. I'm going to add to a generated modifier, which is a thickness or solidify. We're going to add a solidify modifier. And as you can see, that's going to give me a sort of like a thick belt on the character. You can see there's a little bit of an issue there. We can play a little bit with the thickness. We can be like 0.03, for instance. It's going to be a little bit too much, maybe. And on the offset, this is very important. I'm going to set the offset to positive, to number 1, so it goes out. Yeah, that's definitely way too much. Let's try 0.01, which was what originally. That's even too much. 0.00, 0.005. There we go. That's a little bit better. Once we have the material, it's not going to be as noticeable. Now, over here, we're also going to be importing other elements. I'm going to give you guys in the file folders, or the project files, there's going to be 4 main elements. It's going to be the lantern, the baton, and the mask. I'm going to show you the mask right now. So I'm going to go to import. This one, I do believe I exported as FBX. So we can just import FBX. Let's go here, desktop, mannequin, mask. Yeah, there we go. So it's this mask low option that we have right here. 1.2 megabytes. And it might be a little bit too big. As you can see here, the scale for this one was not right. So I need to use this one. Now, another thing that you can see right here is that this thing's not assembled. So I need to position this thing right there. I'm going to give this like solved to you guys. And eventually I'm just going to duplicate this one. So I'm going to grab the mask. Where is it? All of these guys right here. And we're going to scale them. So if we grab, you can see that right now they're set to 0.01. So I'm going to grab all of them, set them to 0.001, and that should give me the proper scale for the character. There we go. This is because I did this mask in Maya, so again, units are a little bit weird. So here, the only thing that we need to do is we're going to rotate in Z. Let's rotate this thing around, and then let's just rotate it a little bit here. I'm going to object set origin again to center of mass. And rotate it a little bit like this. And then just with G, it's a matter of positioning this around Thomas's head. Remember that we, if you have watched the, the live streams, we actually did use Thomas's like actual head. We exported the mannequin, very similar fashion. So this thing right here should match his head really, really closely. And the overlap should be quite minimal. If we need to like extrude or change things around, I'll do this. And don't worry. Well, actually, I was going to say, don't worry. I'm going to give you the mask like exactly positioned like, but my pose might be slightly different than yours. So yeah, it's just a matter of, again, tweaking a little bit of elements right here, making sure it looks as nice as possible. In the next video, we're going to talk about shaders. I'm going to be showing you some of the shaders that we can do here. There we go. As long as we don't have any overlap on this side right now, that's what matters at this point. I know we have a little bit of overlap over here. Again, it's not one of the elements that we're going to be seeing too much. And of course, the hat. Might want to rotate it a little bit so it fits the character. Be nice. We might need to make it a little bit bigger to consider the size of the newly added mask. That looks good. Cool. So again, if we jump here, again, this is roughly going to be our thumbnail right there, so we can appreciate the full character. Probably right around there. I kind of want to see a little bit more. We're going to talk about composition and all that stuff once we get into light, but you can already get an idea of how this thing's going to look. And again, you probably have already seen the final thumbnail. So that's it. I'm going to save the scene, of course, Control S. I'm going to save it. Right now, I'm just saving everything on this like test files and stuff. But eventually, I'm going to give you guys a nicely laid out like project like organization. We're just going to call this Plague Doctor. And there we go. So make sure to export all of your stuff. Make sure to go here into Blender, separate the things that you need to separate, and get ready because we're going to jump now into some texture setup before we go into render. So hang on tight, and I'll see you back on the next one.